to everyone. I see we've already got people in the chat. So exciting. Welcome to everyone. I know this is a hot topic. I have a lot to cover, so I want to jump in. Erica, if you were in here and I need to make you a presenter for housekeeping, please message me on the chat window because I forgot to ask if you needed to do housekeeping. All that to say, she's going to be dropping information into the chat window with information as we go along. First, thank you for joining us. I am Courtney Kearney, founder and owner of C. Kearney Consulting, and we are here to talk about artificial intelligence. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. If you can let me know in the chat window if you can see my slides, that would be super helpful. So I make sure that that is working. Perfect. Yes, we can. All right. So we are specifically talking today about generative AI, if you want to call it Gen AI for short, in the lane of data. There is so much to cover that this is just part one of what I think might be several parts. Who knows how many we'll get to by the end of the year. But I am coming from a data lane, information, things like that. I know we're using on our team generative AI to create very fun things like our last article converted into music, taking the narrative of discussing generative AI and data and putting it to song. We also created a coloring page. I don't have it in front of me, but if you go out to our social media, I colored it on the plane when I went to my last conference last week in Omaha, Nebraska. If you want to print it, I'm sure Erica will drop some of the links into our chat window so that you can go out and play. We also turned our entire staff into cartoon characters. You can see it got my black hat. It got our C. Kearney Consulting on the shirt. I had maroon earrings on in the picture that we used. So super fun if you want to start playing with that. However, today's presentation, we're focusing on data. Just know that we are using it for other things on our team. Resources, we have a ton of them. I just referenced our last article where you can click a link to hear the music. You can get the coloring page, all sorts of things. You can also sign up to receive our emails. If you're ready to dive into either generative AI for data and you want extra coaching, if you've taken our last webinar on data literacy and you want coaching there, if you are ready for a CRM consultant or help with your data management, feel free to book a discovery call to learn more about us and we can learn more about your needs. And then if you haven't done so already, Chaz and I wrote a book on CRM or Die, and feel free to purchase that. We've got a couple more events coming up that I want to bring your attention to. Thursday, May 9th, we're going to discuss the topic of Gen AI and data. That is an interactive conversation. And then our next webinar is June 13th, and that's going to be Data Literacy Part 2. In Part 1, we focused on reading and writing about data. Part 2 is going to focus more on speaking data, so data storytelling, things like that. Now, in the full transparency of AI, specifically Gen AI, there's some housekeeping that needs to happen first. Number one, I am not an AI expert. I just happen to be using AI and wanting to be at the forefront and keeping our clients, our audience, the industry up to date on that. I know, as you know, that the subject matter of AI, generative AI, is limitless and expansive and changing every single day. The last time I gave this presentation, something I said it couldn't do, the very next day it could. I don't know if you know this, but OpenAI got a body a couple weeks ago. Our team watched that video. If you have not watched it, go check out the figure one. So it is changing, all that to say, it is changing rapidly. So I am only one person that is bringing you information through a biased lens of data. Like I opened with, we are using it for image, things like that. But from a presentation standpoint, I am bringing you curated information through the lens of data and things that I know are helpful to our industry. So I just wanted to state that up front. I am also not a lawyer. There are lawyers that are specialized in AI law and human rights. If you have questions about gray areas of copyright infringement, copyright law, please seek someone else. I am not that person. I am not a lawyer. Last but not least, generative AI has been around since the 60s. So what in the world is all the hype about? It's really accessibility that is what is new. So looking at our very first poll question, I want to ask, I got to get to that screen really quick. If you are using generative AI at work, and if so, how often? So are you using generative AI daily at work, once a week or so, rarely, maybe once a month? I've only played around with it personally. No, I haven't used generative AI at work, and I haven't used it at all, whether personally or professionally. We've got really good interactive and participation. Thank you so much for filling out this poll. We have about 76%. So I'm going to give us another maybe 2 seconds. All right, so ending the poll. Looks like one more person is coming through. All right. 19% yes, daily. The most at 28% is about once a week or so. Rarely, maybe once a month, 25%, and then 8%, I've only played around personally, and then 3%, no, I haven't used it at work, and then I haven't used it at all is at 17%. So from this poll alone, you can see that this topic has a wide audience. Those who were like, hey, I'm new here, I absolutely have no idea what this is. You might even be scared or cautious or apprehensive about it, all the way to the people who are like, yep, I'm using it every day. Like Jenny said in the Slack, all day, every day. So that's a wide range. This next, however, 35 minutes or 25 minutes that we have left is about foundation. So really looking at Gen AI 101. So some of this might be good reminders for those of us that are using it every day. Some of this might be new information to you. But first and foremost, please, please, please don't ever put anything into a generative AI chatbot or a system, if you're using something like Copilot that might be installed on your computer, that you wouldn't put on your website or your social media. Why do I say that? It's a safe bet that the AI bots have already scraped your website. So anything that you put on your website or your social media, artificial intelligence already has. So it's a good litmus test of, if I know that if I copy and paste this information into a chat bot of any sort when it's generative AI, if I would put it on the website, if I would put it on the social media, it already likely has it. The other thing is to always follow your firm's AI policy. Now, some of you might be saying, do we even have one? If you don't have one, take the lead and start that discussion. I'm going to show you in a couple slides more information on AI policy, but if you don't have one, start that discussion. When sharing information with generative AI, know what you have permission to use. This is specific to our industry. We all know that there are some clients who have confidential projects. Never share that information with generative AI. If you are under an NDA, do not put that information in. So know what you have permission to use and act accordingly. Constantly check the security policies of the chatbot you are using. One team member on our team is using the native Copilot that you have to pay for through Microsoft that then gets baked into all of your products. So whether you're using Word, Excel, PowerPoint, it's all sitting in there and it has a little Copilot icon. Every time we enter information into that, doesn't matter what program we're using, we first ask it, what is your security policy? What is your security protocol on the information that I'm about to give you? We have gone from using it in the morning, we take a break for lunch, we go back to using it, we ask it again, and the answer has changed. So know that this is a moving target and to always check yourself. because you don't want to assume that the answer that it gave you even yesterday is still relevant today, because these learning language models are absolutely changing, but the companies that we're trusting are also changing how they are using that information. So just always check before you put the information in. Do not upload confidential information. Don't ever put any of your employee information in there that could be a violation, any of that. I always recommend, for safety of that, even if it might not be confidential, maybe it's mixed in and we're going to use our pursuit information and put that data in. We want the analytics, the trends. Remove what could be confidential. So remove the client name, remove the project name. We're going to look at how to do this in a couple slides, but always, for the sake of your data, keep a unique identifier. Keep the opportunity number or keep the project number so you can keep it all together. And then consent is necessary and needed when putting information in. This kind of doesn't, I mean, it applies to data because you need your client's consent if you are going to use the entirety of your client information, but this also applies to your likeness or your employee's likeness. So be careful if you are going to cartoonize your staff or anything like that that's super fun or, relevant. Make sure that you have consent to give away their likeness in an image into a generative AI. The last piece of this is accuracy rates. We're in a chatbot war. Every day, someone is upping the game, and Gemini might be first today, OpenAI might be first tomorrow. With the accuracy rates, just always make sure that you're aware of whatever system you're going to use. What is its accuracy rate currently? So 94%, that's a really good accuracy rate. Even humans have, 94% accuracy rate. Looking at something, if you're using a new piece of technology, if the accuracy rate is 24%, that should alarm you. Hallucinations. If you are new to this topic, you might be like, what in the world is the hallucination? We're going to look at some screenshots here in a minute of what that looks like. But essentially, if your generative AI chat that you're interacting with doesn't know the answer, it will hallucinate. It will make it up, because the whole purpose is that it gives you information, it gives you answers. I'm going to teach you how to work with your prompts to avoid hallucinations as best as possible, but know that they exist. And then you need to understand how the learning module or the learning language model on the other side is working. You could be in a situation where if you're using a free version of OpenAI, it's working off potentially outdated data. So outdated information, meaning it's not currently connected to the World Wide Web. So its learning content was cut off in April of 2022, meaning it doesn't have anything relevant. If you're working on a blog article for how does the new law change affect our wastewater, if it was cut off in 2022, new is not 2024. So know what the information is that you're working off of. I have to remind you that copyright infringement is real. Generative AI is searching and scraping the internet for its content. That's how it's learning, that it's pulling all of that together. So looking at copyright is important. So if you're using generative AI in your research, in your search parameters, in, changing your content, being honest and open about that. It's not really a hallucination or accuracy or however you want to describe this, but if you look at the picture I've used here, I put the text that was on my slides into ChatGPT using DALL-E, and I think we're on DALL-E 3 at this point of when I was using this image, but you'll notice that if you look close enough, it has two hands to hold the book and one to look, quizzitively off into the distance. That is now inaccurate because, maybe this robot does have three hands, but I definitely want to point out that it gets some things right and some things wrong. If you focus in on the best practices AI chatbot that the book title is, it's misspelled it, and on the back side of the book. So making sure that you're always paying attention to is that okay? Well, for this presentation, yes, it makes a point, right? But you also want to be careful about how you're presenting that. So this brings me to my next poll question, which is, if you are using generative AI at work, Are you using a content authentication statement? My poll went away. One moment. I have to reactivate it. There we go. All right. Yes, on everything we're using a content authentication statement, whether it's emails, websites, social media. Yes, but only on a few things. No, but we're planning to. No, what in the world is a content authentication statement? It's a mouthful. We're at 40% participation, so I'm going to give us a couple more seconds. And if you were answering, no, what in the world is this? Like I said at the beginning, if you don't know, this is a moving target. So we have recently in the last 6 months, adopted this policy. So don't feel like you are, oh my gosh, behind the curve by this at all. I do not want anybody to panic about what this is. We're going to go through what it is here in a second. All right. I think we might have some sleepers because we're only at 62% participation. But I'm going to go ahead and end it for the purpose of moving us along. Oh, there we go. A little bit more participation. 61% of you are like, what in the world is this? So excited I can bring you something new. 21 says we're planning on it. 7%, yes, but only on a few things. And 11% of you are doing it on everything. Well done. Super excited to see that some of us are using it. All right, so looking at what it is. Legally, US, we are behind. The EU is well ahead of us in putting legal parameters on AI specifically. So in late 2023, there was an EU AI Act, and it is putting in place that you have to be transparent with how you're using AI in any of your content, any of that situation. I just saw that there was a question about hallucinations. Let me read this really quick. Yes, you absolutely can ask the chatbot that you are working with what its accuracy rate is. And you can also go outside of generative AI and use something like Google, because there's stats every day about their accuracy rate. There are entities specifically around the EU and some of their activities to know exactly what those accuracy rates are, because they have to report that. So great question, Craig. Thank you for asking that. And then we will get to the hallucinations. Yes, you can absolutely ask it not to hallucinate. All right, so back on the content authentication statement. Ethically, we're responsible of keeping the trust of our audience. So if I am using generative AI to write a blog article in its entirety, a human did not write that. If I have an Erica on my team who does a great job of writing content and she writes the next blog article 100% by human, we have now mixed our bylines, if you will, of what we are being transparent of, who is writing what, who's creating what. If you get into a situation where someone questions the copyright of who wrote that, who owns the byline, and you have muddied that where it is not clear what is generated by artificial intelligence, then you've not protected your copyright. And if you go ahead and put a content authentication statement in place, I promise you, your future self, your future marketing staff, your future lawyers will thank you for making it crystal clear what has and has not been used. Yes, we will provide a link to this in the follow-up email. Oh, Erica just responded. Thank you, Erica. I appreciate that. All right. So what in the world is this? And do you have some examples? Yes, I do. If you Google this, you can find other examples, but I'm going to give you how we're using it. This is a screenshot of a recent email that came from us. You'll notice in the very bottom of our footer, there is a content authentication statement. So 78% of this specific newsletter, yes, if you follow us, that percentage does change. We do track it. We're trying to be as transparent and honest as possible to keep the trust of our audience. So 78% of this newsletter was generated by a human member of our team. And then we tell you how we utilized generative AI. ChatGPT specifically to generate the graphic that you see in the background, the opening text, that paragraph, we used it to help us brainstorm the subject line as well. We also have a link to explain why this type of disclosure is important. If you were to click that article that image is linked to, we also provide it at the bottom of the blog article. This is a different one because I wanted you to see that our percentages do change. So this one, we felt like 80% of the article was generated by human authors. Generative AI was used to brainstorm only the header and to create the image, and then also the music that we used for that article. So play with that as you move forward. And if you are diving into, especially those of you who said that you were using it every day, sometimes the waters of, oh no, what did we use? What didn't we use? You've got to make it clear to your audience how that was used. Is the percentage arbitrary? To an extent at this moment? Yes, because we are keeping track of, did we use it to brainstorm the article header? Did we use it to brainstorm the paragraph? If we're doing it things like, we want this to be 100 characters instead of 112 characters, we're not counting that because at that point it's just shortening. It's not changing any of its content. So to a degree, it is a arbitrary number, but again, we're tracking it so that we can see our percentages and make sure that we're staying on board with that. What does the link in your statement go to? The statement about the EU and how that act is going to impact, and what they do over there will start to impact the US because the US is looking. There are committees on AI at the Washington, D.C. area that are looking at, I don't know the name of the committee specifically, looking at what the EU is doing. So it's going to come to us anyway. That's where that link is going. All right, another poll question. Does your firm have an AI policy? And I have got to speed up. I'm talking really fast, but we have so much to cover. So I'm going to do this one really fast. I hope the answer is yes for most of us, or we're working on a policy, but it isn't complete yet. I'll give us a couple seconds on this because I'm only maybe a third through my slides, so I've got to talk faster. Okay, so 40% yes, 31% no, 29% we're working on it. If you are in those later we're working on it and the no we haven't, I would suggest looking at generative AI to help you with your policy, whether it's already in place or not. So if you're working with ChatGPT specifically, the 3.5 is the free version. If you put in provide a robust AI policy for a 100% engineering firm, make it specific to you. We're going to go over prompt writing here in a minute. But if this applies, these are the bullets and the headers that gave very just detailed descriptions under each one of these sections. But these are the sections that it recommends. If you're looking at your AI policy and you're like, oh my gosh, we did not have a bias and fairness section, go check out what it is suggesting. I do like at the very end, it says, remember to involve your key stakeholders, including your employees, and regularly review it. Now, here is what I also suggest. If you already have one in place, feed it to the AI chatbot of choice, and then ask it the reverse. So in this case, I don't have one. So I asked it, what do most companies leave out or fail to include in an AI policy? These are the things that are the most common that were left out or that people didn't think about including. Again, it tells you, remember to review it regularly. If you're using the paid version, ChatGPT-4, I asked it the same question. Really, it's just the language that changed, but it did have under the development and deployment risk assessment, which didn't show up on the free version. So you're not missing a whole lot if you're still working off of the free 3.5 version. Once we get into part 2 and part 3 of generative AI, you are missing things if you're not on the paid version, specifically around custom GPTs when it comes to data analytics. But for something like this, it's still pretty close to each other, free or paid. I've mentioned AI chatbots a lot. Ours currently of choice for data and information is ChatGPT. You can also use Copilot, Claude, Gemini, or Bard is now Gemini. And then there's many more on the right-hand side available to you. They're all based off of learning language models behind it. So also know which one that you're sitting on. Now we're going to switch gears and talk about prompts, and that is how you successfully use your AI chatbots for text and data. Prompts are how you train your chatbots. The reason that we really prefer ChatGPT is because we've been using it so long that it knows our voice, it knows our personality, it has learned all of that for us. So it makes interacting with it a whole lot quicker because we don't have to train it as heavily as if we were trying to use some of the others. Now, prompt writing tips. If you've already checked out the article, these are outlined for you, but I want to specifically talk through some of the bullets. To best use your prompt writing, always assign it a role. So when we're talking about data, you are a data analyst in this role for this size company. This is what I want you to do. Looking at if I am a marketer, some of the ones that we've used, I'm a marketer for a CRM and data management firm looking to create a 12-month plan for our social media. What are the holidays that are specific to CRM and data? And it will give you those. Pi Day was a big one for us to celebrate. So looking at that, specific role. Be specific in your ask, be specific in what you want out. I want 100-word, I want 1,000-word blog article. Sometimes I forget to be specific in my output, and then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, stop. You're giving me 5,000 paragraphs. I only wanted 3. So think about that as you go through your prompt writing. Looking at your output, be specific in what you want. Type like you talk. So looking at conversationally type, stay away from things like jargon or heavy to our industry. Do this, don't do this. Give me this output, do not hallucinate. Avoid jargon, use examples. So when it's coming to data, hey, I want you to clean this data set and I want it to look like this. This is the expectation of what it should do, and give it some examples. And then be patient and build on your prompts. Okay, that was great, or no, you missed the mark. This is what I'm expecting you to do. Keep building on those previous prompts. With generative AI, patience is required. So just remember, as you work through those hallucinations, just like any coworker, you've got to train it as you go. So an example prompt, write a 100-word bio for Courtney Kearney of C. Kearney Consulting. Give me details for the undergraduate, what year I graduated, when I founded my business, and the book that I wrote. The first iteration, it got the things underlined correct, and it got the things highlighted incorrect. So I said, you know what? Same prompt, but if you do not know the information, leave it blank. So to answer your question earlier, can you tell it not to hallucinate? If you use the word hallucinate, doesn't really know what you're talking about. But if I be specific and I said, if you do not know the information, leave it blank, then it did this. It knew the year I graduated before and where I graduate, or it knew where I graduated before, but then it was like, oh, I don't know if I got it right. So then it put it in brackets. So you can ask it not to hallucinate by using the words like leave it blank if you don't know. Looking at specific ways to use it with data, and I know I'm right up against the time, so I'm going to go pretty fast on this. You're going to get these slides so you can read these bullets on your own. But essentially, it's your first step to understanding a data set. Looking at things like understand, how do you analyze this data? How should I understand it? Summarize it. What are the challenging perspectives of this data? Look at the patterns, the trends, the missing information. Create charts or data visuals based on this information. Looking at things like what are the errors that are present that you might be so intimate with this data set that you might be overlooking some of those. What are the outliers? Like if there is a 0 input and all of a sudden you have one number who's significantly above or below your normal data range. Looking at discovering patterns or correlations in your project information. Looking at your forecast of trends, conducting correlation, and then merging data sets. This last one, be very, very careful with. I'm not 100% satisfied with some of the results, but know that that is changing at a rapid pace. Then looking at the first step to understanding. So what do I mean by that? We're going to go through so many examples of this in part 2, but I didn't want those of you who are using it on a daily basis to not feel like you got anything. So I've got a couple screenshots for you. Looking at, I gave it a data set, and then I said, hey, what are the summarize the data set, tell me the errors, the counts, the things like this. This was for a simple data set that I already knew what the errors were and I wanted to test it. It will give you those in a summarization back. You've always got to remember to remove the data set or remove that sensitive data. If you don't love Excel and you don't want to take it from your company name to your client name, you can use AI to do that. So I copied only the opportunity number and the company name into a spreadsheet and uploaded that. In order to give an Excel file to ChatGPT specifically, you have to be on the paid version of 4, but you will watch here that it took that information, stripped out, and gave every single one a company A, company B, company, and correlated that because it knew that there was duplicate data. It's not just chatbots where generative AI is sitting. If you have not played with and analyzed data in Excel, we'll talk about this in the part 2, but go click it. No matter what your data set is, it's really fascinating to go see what it does because it gives you insights in just the headers alone. So here it's just fictitious data about prospect types, and in a click of a button, it gives me 40 different versions of chart types, and each one of those headers is a takeaway from that data set. So it's giving you insight into that data at a click of a button, and this is built in to Excel. I follow a bunch of resources. Everybody always asks me, what are you following? These are the ones that I suggest. There is a AEC AI that SMPS is putting on next month. If you are in the California area or want to fly there to attend it, I've included that link as well. Again, these links will be in the recap of these slides. I'm so sorry that I had to move so fast again. This topic is so heavy, and this was just part 1, guys. We didn't even get into a whole lot of the examples and things like that, but thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be talking about this topic May 9th, so join us for that. Oh, I see that I have some things in the chat window. Oh, good to see you too, and thank you for joining us. And if you have other questions, if you want to reply to Erica's email when we follow up with the slides and things like that, please feel free to do that. I hope you got something out of this, no matter where you are in your generative AI journey. And again, be on the lookout for our part 2 and part 3 because this is such an expansive topic. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you again next month.